They send men here to rob us, so work and strive for money. Money is power. Money is the only weapon that the Jew has to defend himself with.
It's not every family that Hollywood makes an Oscar-nominated movie about, nor one that so successfully cements the Rothschilds' reputation as the most famous clan in the world. Enormously wealthy, enormously private, fueling the endless speculation about the real extent of their power.
You are 5 brothers. I want you each to start a banking business in a different country.
In 2 centuries, they have funded war and peace, financed an entire continent, and founded a nation. They have given their name to a bank, a butterfly, a wine, and a kangaroo. And yet, for all their wealth, power, and influence, there is one class they believe they do not belong to.
We shouldn't be in a series entitled The Aristocrats, because we're not. And we're not part of that tradition of the English.
Do you think now not? Still not?
No, definitely not.
Because?
We're Jewish, which means we'll always be outsiders.
And as such, as Hollywood also made clear, the Rothschilds have never been afraid to stand apart.
And if I can't hold the market, England's credit is gone. I'm giving all I've got to give for the peace of Europe. And whatever other Englishmen do tomorrow, I buy today.
The ultimate Rothschild house lies high on a hill in the home counties. A fantastical creation that wouldn't look out of place as a Loire chateau or a Disney castle. Waddesdon Manor. Its interior is every bit as overpowering as its exterior, packed with priceless paintings, fabulous jewels, and fragile furniture. It's a national trust house, but though the trust own it, the Rothschilds still control and pay for it, much as they have done for a century.
What's really different about Waddesdon to virtually every other National Trust house is that it's run by one man, Jacob Rothschild, Lord Rothschild. At Waddesdon, Jacob Rothschild feels that he is the owner, and like a royal palace, it's the sort of physical manifestation of Jacob Rothschild.
Inside the house, far away from public view, the famously discreet billionaire is hosting a private party to celebrate an art world coup. In 2007, he paid £5 million for Jean-Louis Chardin's subtle masterpiece, Boy with a House of Cards. But now he's persuaded 3 of the world's top museums to lend him their Chardins, the copies of his painting. Only Lord R, as he's known, could do it.
It was the first picture that he did of the fall. So it gets simpler as he develops it.
Very good.
It is good. I think it's rather wonderful thing.
Yes, it is.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for coming. I'm just here to welcome you to our Chardin exhibition, taking time.
The ones at the top were the very first that Chardin made. That's where he's experimenting and inventing the composition and the subject.
He employs the country's leading Chardin expert. And today, she's tour guide to his wealthy and powerful friends.
A singleton. So that was a singleton.
A Sainsbury, an ambassador's wife, a clutch of European cousins.
Which makes this lovely sort of arch.
And I think I'm right in saying that the 2 pairs of the Sky Boy and the Sky Boy have never been actually seen.
They've never been seen.
Nevertheless, her employer can't entirely restrain himself from correcting his own expert, or showing off the Venetian paintings next door.
Emphasise the extraordinary extravagance of the lighting. So there were thousands and thousands and thousands of candles.
Do you think it's true, Juliet, Farnese and his family were interior decorators? And that they were...
Jacob Rothschild is one of the most influential men in Britain. Some say the most. His guests at Waddesdon are not confined to the nobility and newly rich. Royalty and presidents also come here, each time planting a tree in commemoration, their spades left gleaming in the corridor leading to the visitor lavatories. He was born in 1936 to a Bloomsbury heiress and a Rothschild peer, Victor, 3rd Baron. Educated at Eton and Oxford, where he got a first in history. He was employed in the family bank, where he made a name for himself as the leading financier of his day. Then he left to fund his own firm to conspicuous success. With a huge fortune, a run of high-profile achievements, and a lineage stretching back 2 centuries, he certainly appears the consummate toff.
But I'm not an aristocrat, please.
You think not?
No.
Why not?
Why not? Because, we haven't been here long enough. We're a new, very rich family. It started in the middle of the 19th century, and that's not our pattern. Look, I like the British aristocracy and admire them in many ways, but we're not really part of that world.
It is a remark that characteristically conceals more than it reveals. Narrowly defined, English aristocrats enjoy vast houses, a pedigree stretching back 5 rather than just 2 centuries, and gained their titles, often as not, in military service to the crown. At the time Blenheim was being built, 40 miles up the road, Jacob Rothschild's ancestors were living, without a name, in the Frankfurt ghetto. The name finally given to them is a corruption of the colour of the sign hanging over their door. Rot, or red. Schild, or shield. But their rise was stellar once they left the ghetto, and the 5 sons, or arrows of Patriarch Amschel, spread out across Europe. Nathan Mayer Rothschild arrived in Manchester in 1798, penniless, then moved to London to join forces with another émigré Jewish family and trade gold, their first major success coming after Britain's victory at Waterloo.
My ancestor Moses Montefiore and Nathaniel Rothschild, the first Rothschild to arrive in Britain, married sisters and did a lot of business together. They may even have benefited from that famous bit of insider trading, the news from the Battle of Waterloo, profitably.
Together, the families prospered, riding high on the coattails of empire.
Britain became the greatest power in the world. The government needed large loans to do all the things that 19th century governments wanted to do, maintain their empires, build battleships, railways, and so on. And the Rothschilds, as the prime family for delivering these loans, became vastly rich, richer than anyone else, and that wealth changed everything.
They were able to move up and out, a clutch of Rothschilds leaving London for the leafy shires.
They all decided to settle in this very narrow valley in the Vale of Aylesbury. And they all built these huge houses, almost within sight of each other. In fact, it's said that you could stand on top of any Rothschild mansion and wave to a cousin. And actually, my sisters and I tried to do that, and it doesn't work. But they are quite near each other.
And as their wealth and influence grew, so they started to ape the manners of their noble neighbours. They had the wealth of aristocrats. Why not be them?
The Rothschilds began to sort of, in a way, mimic an aristocratic lifestyle. They had huge country houses, some of which they built from scratch. They went fox hunting. They kept herds of cows. When you went to their houses, you were famously offered, what sort of milk do you want, sir, with your tea? Do you want Jersey milk? And they would list the numbers of the cow herds that they had.
In 1860, Ferdinand de Rothschild, an Austrian cousin of Nathan Mayer's, joined the family gold rush, hoping to find English society more congenial than Vienna's. In 1874, he started building Waddesdon and finished it in just 5 years.
This house, of course, is a magnificent 3D calling card built by Ferdinand de Rothschild in the 1880s, when the family were trying to establish themselves in British society. And what they realised was that it wasn't enough just to have a fancy boardroom, that business was actually done in the sitting rooms, on the hunting fields, and in the house parties. So what better, really, than to build yourself this magnificent entertaining centre? And, of course, here is where he had kings and queens and statesmen. And if you look at the visitors' book, you'll see that everyone from Winston Churchill to the Shah of Persia to Queen Victoria came to stay here.
Ferdinand used Waddesdon as the venue for his famous Saturday to Monday parties, but the entertaining cloaked a private tragedy.
He married the love of his life, who then died, giving birth to their only and first child, who also died. So it became, his entire life. It became his surrogate mistress, wife, lover, if you like. He then spent the rest of his life filling it full of beautiful things that he collected from around the world.
So how well did the 3D calling card work? Not so good. The exuberance of Waddesdon's architecture was mocked as the last word in nouveau riche taste.
It's a very curious house. I mean, here was a property which had belonged to the Duke of Marlborough, and before that to the Earls of Wharton, and suddenly along comes some Rothschild who, as a French architect, to put up a huge French sort of look-alike chateau, incorporating the best features of various chateaux in the Loire on the top of Buckinghamshire hillside. No wonder the Duke of Buckingham thought it was awful. And it's very curious.
Polite society did flock here, attracted by those new riches. But it was less than polite about its host.
If you look at the visitors' book, there are very kind of undermining and kind of condescending things written by his visitors, and indeed written by all the visitors to Rothschild houses. They were Jews. They were very nouveau riche. They were throwing their money around, so they were never going to be acceptable.
At first, the Jews who arrived here were regarded as total foreigners, whether they were Rothschild, Montefiores. They were always aware of how outside the establishment they were.
It was a distaste that extended all the way to royalty.
Of course, when Queen Victoria came, she insisted on eating in her own dining room. They had to kind of serve her separate food away from these kind of upstart nouveau riche Rothschilds. But she did come. She didn't want to be seen too close to them. So she sat apart. And of course, when, they'd done a lot for the Queen and country. They'd, for example, financed the Suez Canal. And when it was suggested that maybe a Rothschild should be ennobled, Queen Victoria wrote said she would not consent to a Jew becoming a peer. Anyway.
Titles were a sore point for Ferdinand and his cousins. They wanted to belong, and they wanted recognition of their wealth and support for the government.
They still didn't have the vote. They still couldn't be elected to Parliament. And so the Rothschilds and Montefiores launched this huge campaign to win the vote, to allow non-Anglicans, in fact, because it included Catholics, to vote and to serve in Parliament.
In 1830, the first bill for Jewish emancipation was presented to Parliament and rejected. In 1847, Ferdinand's father-in-law, Lionel, was elected an MP, but deemed unable to take his seat because of his religion. Only in 1885 was Ferdinand's brother-in-law, Nathaniel, created the first Baron Rothschild, Ferdinand taking over his seat in the Commons.
However splendid their palaces were in Buckinghamshire, however wonderful the titles they received were, and however great their fortunes, they never felt totally secure here.
Jacob is the fourth Baron Rothschild. He inherited responsibility for Ferdinand's house because his family judged him the man best suited to the task. But for all his wealth and clout, he still sees himself and his family, just like Ferdinand, as being half in, half out of polite society.
We were immigrants from the ghetto, not part of the British aristocracy. We may have become part of the British establishment to a certain extent, but that's a rather different thing.
They always remained semi-inside, semi-outside. The basis of their success was the fact that they did cross worlds, and that has never changed.
Jacob Rothschild's HQ is Spencer House in the heart of Mayfair, just a block from his friend Prince Charles's home at St James's Palace. Nobody really knows the value of the businesses here, just that, like British toffs, Jacob was born rich. But unlike them, he's got a whole lot richer.
We acquired it because we saw clearly that in 2008, of course, the world's financial system was coming to an end. And we saw that coming.
Oh, very nice.
Connections and cash are the hallmarks of this very private Rothschild.
I feel, it makes me feel a little bit nervous if there are a lot of people around. We've got a lot to do. We've got a lot going on. We sold, did you see we sold all our North Sea oil interests?
I did see that you saw.
Last week.
With a tribute to the management team, I saw.
With a great tribute to the management team, quite rightly. And I'm just off to China.
My God, are you?
Tomorrow morning, yeah.
So did you make a bit of a turn on the North Sea oil buying?
Yeah, we did well on that, yeah, we did. 2.8 times.
2.8?
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
That's good.
Or, to put it another way, in just under 2 years, he's made just over £70 million on this one deal alone.
I do believe there's a special talent in that family, and an ability to survive, and a sense of family that's gone beyond any others. I mean, if you look at all the financial dynasties of the world, we see them all the time rising and falling within one generation. They're unique, and there's something special about them.
So it's a very spread family now, and I think we count ourselves lucky that the DNA has survived to the extent that it has. We got there somehow.
There's a bit more to it than that, and another point of distinction. Aristocrats hand on the entirety of their wealth to the firstborn son. Rothschilds give it to the most able. When Jacob left university, he went into the family bank. His father was chairman, but utterly uninterested in finance.
Victor is absolutely brilliant. He's a scientist, he plays cricket for Northampton, he's incredibly brave during the war, he gets given a George Medal for bomb disposal. I mean, he's really, really clever, but he doesn't have business acumen. And nor is he interested in being a businessman, incidentally. He was brought up away, if you like, from the kind of seething mass of the financial world, so didn't have that language, and was really interested in being an intellectual, and that's what he liked.
Picking his successor as chairman of the bank, Victor didn't support his son, as Aristos would, but rather Jacob's cousin Evelyn, sparking a massive family row.
That was a thing that happens in businesses, and he wanted to go off and do his own thing, and he's been very successful. I'm delighted. We're very close friends, and we get on very well.
Evelyn stayed at New Court as chairman. Jacob moved out to Mayfair, making deal after deal with ruthless corporate raiders like Jimmy Goldsmith and Rupert Murdoch, amassing a vast fortune in the process.
There didn't really seem to be, for many generations, a Rothschild who was that interested or good at banking, this kind of combination, until my dad comes along. And I would say that he, somehow or other, maybe there's a recessive gene or something happens, but he's born, and actually he turns out to be a very brilliant financier.
The hallmarks of his extraordinary success were the family hallmarks: acumen, total discretion, and a minute attention to detail.
I hope I've got average intelligence, or maybe a bit above, and, a strong will to keep things going and to add something to them.
And it seems to be a slight sense of disequilibrium that you're not a man who ever sits still, ever. That's my limited experience.
Yeah. No, I'm restless and active and all those things, and have a, great curiosity about life.
Jacob's other point of distinction is that, having amassed a fortune in the way that British aristocrats have not, he is now spending it on something they can no longer afford: art, stuffing Waddesdon full of it.
The one on the left should just come out a little bit more. Don't you think it should come in about half an inch? And even the one on the right should come in.
Every piece installed to that familiarly precise specification.
It just needs moving a little tiny bit to the right. About an inch. Bit more. Bit more. Bit more. Let's have a look.
He's the sort of person that nobody dares say no to. And I think that in that way he is very similar to any great duke or earl or whatever from 16th, 17th, 18th centuries. But he's unusual in today, in that he doesn't try and hide behind a closed door. This is his statement as Noel or Hardwicke Hall or Chatsworth were the statements of their families in those days.
It's not only designers and decorators who flock to serve Jacob, but also the most famous and fashionable artists.
This wall's quite fun because here we've got, in a way, it tells you both about the family and also it's an example of collecting being brought up to the present day. So there's my father painted by Lucian Freud, the bottom one, and my mother painted by Mike Andrews, who was part of the London School. And Lucian Freud was a great friend of my father's. In fact, here he is at Waddesdon, in front of the Chardin, the boy with the house of cards.
In some ways, he's a very personification of a man of, to quote Mick Jagger, a man of wealth and taste. And he's an amazing collector, philanthropist, and the rest. But he's still a Rothschild. He's still Jewish. He's still half outsider, half insider, in the way that only the Rothschilds could be.
So Jacob's acquisitions are informed by his family's history and the Rothschilds' tenuous place in society, a tension evident in the next exhibition planned here.
Is that heavy or is that all right?
No, it's fine.
Okay, brilliant.
Thanks.
Okay. So this is
Edmund de Waal is Britain's foremost potter. Just one of his fragile creations will set you or I back a minimum of £500,000. Today, Jacob Rothschild is taking delivery of 10. All and more, the title of Edmund's first installation, is painstakingly manoeuvred into place.
Is it okay?
Yep. That's fine.
Everyone breathe out. Fantastic. That works for me. It's completely itself, but it's also in this place. Otherwise, it's just interior decorating. You know, for goodness sake. I mean, that's not what I'm about. And so it has to have its own integrity.
There isn't an element of visual joke about this.
Yeah. I'll accept that.
The pile of plates left by
Yes.
the dwells.
Yeah. Yes, I mean it's washing up. You know, it as well.
Now for the next one. Title, The Fascination of Something Difficult.
Yes. I think that's really beautiful, actually. It works laterally as well, which is really
There's more
good.
to it than pots and plates. Behind Jacob's commission lies a dark shared history between the Rothschilds and the de Waals. Edmund is descended from another great Jewish family, the Ephrussi of Vienna, whose rise and fall he chronicled in his bestseller, Hair with the Amber Eyes.
How rich, powerful were they?
The Ephrussi family, well,
Yeah.
they were extraordinarily rich. You know, not Rothschild rich, but pretty near it.
But the Nazis put paid to all that.
I mean, every Jewish family, I mean, everyone is you know, violently assaulted, you know, physically assaulted, dispossessed, you know, erased from the texture of life. These objects are doing something slightly different from the other objects in the room, trying to make a line in space, of trying to hold something in space so you can see through, you can see the frame.
Today, Edmund's ceramics are to be unveiled. The lure of Britain's foremost potter and one of its richest men is catnip to the world's media. But art connoisseurship keeps being supplanted by the two families' tangled past.
Hello, hi, how are you?
Hello.
Nice to see you, congratulations.
Lovely to be here, and the sun's shining.
This is American Radio is poised with a question that's on every reporter's lips.
Rothschild, this is Vicky.
Hello,
Darby, who's
Vicky
making...
Barker.
Barker,
Nice
who's
to meet you.
making-
So sorry, I was hoping to just ask you a couple of questions.
Okay, try.
All right, a slightly bullshit question, which is, having read the book of this family that was as enormously wealthy as the Rothschild family, and and then lost everything so catastrophically through circumstances far beyond their control. Was there a little part of you that, when you're with Edmund, thinks, well, if the wheel had turned slightly different, maybe our roles might have been reversed?
Well, they were. I mean, we didn't do that well in the war, I can tell you. We had an extremely tough time, and we just chose different paths after the war. We did what we did, which was to continue to be involved in banking and investment and all that. And there's been something of a renaissance in the First War period. We had a very, very tough time during the war. He's got an immensely distinguished career as a writer and as an artist, and as a writer.
But also, I mean, all the French family and Viennese family and German family, Rothschild cousins of yours, I mean, had appalling time.
Appalling. I mean, the Vienna. If you take the Austrian Rothschilds, they didn't survive as a factor after the war. If you take the German Rothschilds, they'd actually gone before the Second World War. If you take Naples, they went at the time of the reunification of Italy, thereabouts. So, you know, we've had a tough road.
Yes.
It wasn't only that Rothschilds across Europe were hunted down mercilessly. Hollywood had made them an icon of wealth and influence. Goebbels decided to turn that image to his advantage, making his own film, in which they were depicted as the font of a conspiracy to take over the world.
Hier, passen Sie mal auf. London? Wie? Neapel? Hier in Frankfurt ist unser Stammhaus.
Na, was liegt da?
Jerusalem.
Wollen Sie da auch eine Filiale gründen?
The Nazis' poisonous legacy lives on in 1,000 crazed internet conspiracy theorists who depict Jacob Rothschild as the ruler of a global dominion. Their anti-Semitic ravings fueled by the family's long-standing links with Israel. Edmund Rothschild funded the first Jewish settlements in Palestine. Jacob's grandfather Walter received the Balfour Declaration. But Israel is an issue where family members have very different views.
What about Israel, with whom the families also had an equivalent relationship as well?
Well, no, there you talk to Jacob. He must have told you all about that. I respect Israel, but I believe passionately in that they should be a Palestinian state, and I believe the Palestinian state should join up with Israel.
Jacob is in fact devoting another portion of his wealth to a family foundation, Yad Hanadiv, that's funding good works in Israel. It's paying for a new national library.
In the case of Israel, it's a particularly complicated vision because we've got a very large Arab minority in Israel. We've got neighbours. And, you know, if one can build bridges in those contexts to a national library, so much the better.
Whatever the rights and wrongs of the country and Jacob's involvement, the fact of it is another point of difference between him and the more parochial English nobility, making him the true heir of his ancestors who held Europe in fee. But it doesn't stop there. As Jacob Rothschild nears the end of his life, he's decided to reinvent himself. He's made his fortune. Now he's going to give most, rather than some of it, away. It's a decision that takes him above and beyond the confines of an aristocracy, more concerned with counting the pennies than donating the pounds.
Hi, how are you?
Very well, yourself?
Good, good. Do we have to put it on?
You do.
The first sign of this sea change is a building site. He's spending millions converting a battered estate farm, Windmill Hill, into a gleaming family archive, come study centre, come launchpad for a new Rothschild think tank. Where Waddesdon makes you think of Ruritania, Windmill Hill conjures up California rather than the home counties, another sign of the global reach of the man behind it.
Took up the whole of that space. Doesn't that make sense? Don't you think?
But it's a global reach founded on that familiarly infinite capacity for taking minute pains.
Wouldn't you start right on that edge there and make Windmill Hill much higher, 5 areas much smaller?
Yes. Right, okay. Yes, yes.
There's nothing he likes more than building a new house, or a new, archive, or a new whatever. So
Why?
I think it's a form of creativity, actually. I think really it's a way of expressing his creativity. And every single brick that goes into those buildings is personally overseen.
Windmill Hill is now a month from completion. Jacob is here with art advisor Pippa Shirley and interior designer David Mulnarich, and a snagging list. First item, a 4-ton chimp.
Is it clear what it is? Should he be head on?
I think I preferred him when he was a bit more twisted, actually.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. It was tempting to have it like that, but you really can't see what.
And coming up, you see it better, because otherwise you can't see what it is.
You can't see what it is, no.
Jacob collected work by Brit Arts star Angus Fairhurst, right up to his suicide 2 years ago. Gorillas were the subject of his endlessly troubled fascination.
More than first, don't you? That we might look different then, mightn't it? It might. And you could try, nice to have somebody just moving it around a bit.
The guy should be here so I can go and get them.
It's all part of Jacob's stash of achingly fashionable art that Windmill Hill is to be home to. But nobody can be found to move the bronze behemoth, so it's off to check on the contours of his new lawn.
Is it difficult to do it with the...
It's not too bad. You've
right.
just got to sort of...
Right.
The suspension in this mile, which kind of helps it go up and down over the curves. But
I see. And that's the continuation of the rolling road.
Yes, one more go, yes.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. Brilliant.
It's coming on, isn't it?
It doesn't worry you a bit, David, that it's sort of significantly higher than any of the other rails.
When it's greener, do you think it will?
Well, that's the question.
Can we go and look at it from close on?
The mound and down.
To create a grass lawn. So we'll
See, the other thing is...
I put it long ways, looking into the garden.
I think you should be looking out at the view.
No, I think it ought to be centred on the doorway.
I think it's best to try it horizontally.
Like this.
I mean more this way.
No, I think this way. The table.
No, I'm talking about the gorilla itself up there.
One of my kind of abiding memories from growing up was, can we just move it a few inches to the left or the right, because we're constantly, all 4 children, picking up large pieces of furniture and moving them an infinitesimal amount to the left or the right.
Over at Windmill Hill, things are hotting up.
I was wondering about those.
Putting them here?
Yeah.
Perhaps it would be better to be a table than a chair.
A little bit this way. That's it, about that. That's better, you see, isn't it?
Okay.
Can we just try it sort of 3 inches more this way still? No, this way.
the angle.
No, the other way. No, sorry, that way. That way. That's right.
Stop.
Back. Stop.
Yes.
That's it. Yeah. I think that's pretty good, don't you?
Very.
What do you think about that angle?
It's the best.
It's the best, isn't it? Do you think it's worth trying another 5 degrees this way? Can you try just a touch? Just move it 3 inches more this way still.
Then, in the midst of all this, one of the world's most famous and, yes, fashionable artists, Turner Prize winner Richard Long, turns up for lunch.
So we've been, what do you call it, home decorating.
Jacob has a cunning plan for him, and art dealer Michael Hugh Williams. But first a check on something new at the manor.
We have this aviary, and in the middle of the aviary we're putting a piece of sculpture which belongs to a friend of mine called The Mountain by Anish Kapoor. And the friend of mine's got nowhere to put it. Yeah. So she said, do you want to borrow it? So I said, yeah. So we're going to try it there for a year.
Great.
As a kind of exhibition.
So we've got there now.
They're installing it, so it'd be quite nice just to go by. All over the place. You can see it actually just out there.
As others swap stamps, Jacob amasses prize-winning art. Kapoor is, of course, another Turner winner. Modelled on the aviary at Versailles, Waddesdon's copy housed Ferdinand's bird collection. They'd flock at the sound of his voice. Now it's home to £3 million worth of granite, or rather aluminium, masquerading as granite. The acquisition is yet another mark of Jacob's difference from the more blinkered of his peers. A week later, and back at Windmill Hill, he's persuaded Richard Long to decorate his archive with not one, but two artworks. The only time Long has paired his creations, and the first time he's been filmed making one. Famous for working with natural artefacts, mud is his new medium of choice, at a cool £1 million a throw.
I think it might be a little bit more water. Where's the water? Years of practice.
You say that.
A month on, and anomalous modern art litters Waddesdon's lawn. An art party is in preparation to celebrate the completion of Windmill Hill. It's finished.
And of course he's been involved at every stage, you know, even down to talking about which piece and why we wanted this artist or that artist. And, you know, it's been a lengthy process.
There's just one last piece to be installed. Another Turner winner, conceptual artist Douglas Gordon, has been summoned to honour Britain's Medici.
My only contact has been wine.
What, drinking it?
Yeah.
How's that gone?
It went down very well.
He's preparing an installation to honour victims of torture, amidst the bone china and fine wine. The gold sculptures symbolise hacked-off limbs, albeit hacked-off limbs worth over £500,000.
You should see where the feet go.
But this is clever too, with the water. I mean, the big idea is that framed view outside.
The oddity of the spectacle is lost among the clink of glasses and chatter of the wealthy.
You like it? Don't you think it works well together? Yeah. I think it's brilliant.
Toasting a man who could not be more different to his parochial and survival-obsessed peers. There is, however, one thing they have in common. Eventually, they all have to confront death and taxes. Death comes to us all. Peer, pauper, and billionaire. This is the grave of the first British Rothschild, Nathan Mayer, a modest tomb in the Brady Street Cemetery just off the Whitechapel High Street.
Nathan Mayer. That doesn't give his title.
No,
Nathaniel
Mayer, Hampshire, Rothschild. No.
You look here. Nathan Mayer has no title.
No title.
Why
He
do they
was the
say?
one with the Napoleonic Wars, wasn't he?
You need really a proper historian to find these things.
Sorry.
We know our limitations.
The Rothschild way of death has always played a key part in maintaining the family's wealth and marks a very final point of difference from the British nobility. Toffs rely on primogeniture, inheritance by the firstborn son. But from time to time, the lottery of DNA has played havoc with the ideal of seamless transition. Casualties we have come across in this series include Jamie Blandford, heir to the largest palace in Britain.
What's your legacy going to be?
I don't know. I don't think I've got the strength.
It's not that bad a headache. Come on, man. For God's sake.
He crumpled at the prospect of his inheritance, took to crack aged just 25, and has only just got clean.
I'm looking for a four-leafer.
Then there's Anthony Ashley Cooper, 10th Earl of Shaftesbury. He couldn't turn round his crumbling Dorset estate and took to drink. He fled to France, fell prey to an escort, Jamila Mbarak, and then he disappeared.
And there was a sense like, oh, you know, shit, something's happened here, because you always felt like something was going to happen.
A year later, the hapless Earl's body was discovered in a remote alpine ravine, murdered at his new wife's instruction. Even the sanguine Earl of March, presiding over the success that is Goodwood, admits to a residual fear that he won't make it.
Well, I absolutely couldn't deny that I don't fear failure. Absolutely, I'm. You know, I wouldn't want to be the one to screw up.
There is an English model which is, you know, botched alliances and the kinds of marrying your daughters to the wrong thick prince. But what the Rothschilds do is they're bloody savvy. You know, they always seem to be on the up.
There's no completely easy assumption that, look, just because you're the oldest, you're going to run the bank.
So this one was in 1998, when the cemetery was already been closed for about 130 years, and they had to get...
This is the grave of Jacob's father, Victor.
It's unique, isn't it, that he's come here to this particular cemetery rather than going to Willesden. And I think it says a lot of the men, humble, I think, to come to this cemetery because he knew what the state of the cemetery was when he died, and he knew what sort of area it was, but he still wanted to come here.
It took an act of Parliament to get him buried here. Only a Rothschild could do it. But then perhaps only a Rothschild could not have handed the running of the family bank to his son. But brutal as it seems, he was following family tradition.
So, you know, they kind of get it right. You know, they kind of look hard round the family and find the right person to take it forward. You know, but there is that hard look.
Yeah.
There hasn't been that kind of English descent into kind of the weak-chinned aristocracy.
Ironically, Victor's son now has a succession headache all of his own. Waddesdon. Jacob was chosen by his Aunt Dorothy as the best qualified Rothschild for the job. Now he has to choose between his 4 children, banker Nathaniel, garden designer Beth, archaeologist Emily, and documentary maker Hannah. For a while it seemed that his son Nathaniel, or Nat, was the obvious candidate.
It seems to me that the present generation are doing okay. My son's commercial life, financial life, is going great guns.
Yeah.
So you see, you know, he was on his mother's side. Her grandfather was a great entrepreneur, And on our side, he had some Rothschild genes, and the two together seemed to be a great winning combination.
But Nat's recently had an unfortunate run of publicity. And anyway, he's more interested in business than old houses.
Oh, it's fantastic. It's fantastic. I mean, look at it.
So increasingly, it looks like Hannah will take on Waddesdon.
What does it mean to be a Rothschild to you? What did it mean to you, sort of growing up?
I think I was quite overawed by it because, of course, it's a name that people recognise. And it's associated with banking, which I'm not, with excellence, which I don't feel that I am, and with vast amounts of money. So I didn't really feel that I qualified for any of those things. Now, of course, I've become rather proud of it and, you know, being part of this, you know, extraordinary heritage. But, you know, I think it takes doing your own thing and having your own career and getting confidence in your own career to be able to carry the mantle of a famous name.
It remains the most sensitive of questions. Today at Spencer House, Jacob is installing a piece by Tony Cragg, the 4th Turner Prize winner he's accommodated in a year.
I do like this very much, actually, don't you?
Over the weekend, there's been speculation that he has finally decided that Hannah will get Waddesdon.
What happens to Waddesdon on the hopefully not too close day when you're not around?
Yes.
What is your intention?
Well, that's a highly personal question.
Yeah.
But, you know, I've got a wonderful daughter who's deeply interested in it, Hannah.
Yeah.
2 other daughters, a son, a foundation which has become much bigger in the last 20 years. So it'll be well looked after. Okay, thanks.
However tricky this question, this is the way that the Rothschilds have ensured that, unlike much of the British aristocracy, they don't crumble into chinless obscurity, and that century to century their influence, power and wealth grow and grow.
The Rothschilds are totally unique. They're not an ordinary aristocratic family, they're not an ordinary financial family. They're unique and they are supra-class.